You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Welcome to episode 10 of season 5 of the Fezcast. At the time of year when all the big guns are on international duty, they're off sunning themselves or they're injured or suspended. I'm obviously talking about Fezcast co-hosts and not the Saracens players. I've been left on the top for most of this one, but I've managed to speak to a couple of people in and around our panel just to get a few things in about the matches this weekend. John Manning's joined me to have a chat about the Ealing game. He was there at that one as there was no TV coverage, and the new and quite frankly only member of the Fezcast youth wing, Alex Anthony, has joined us for her debut on the show, talking about the Exeter Women's game at the weekend as well. So got those two things. And also Duncan and Sam a couple of weeks ago spoke to the intriguingly job-titled Emily Wiles, who's the Director of Growth at Saracens, and she'll tell us exactly what that means in a second. But yeah, because I haven't got a co-host to bounce off here, we're just going to play three things back to back, starting with that interview with Emily Wiles. So hopefully you enjoy this week's show.
This is the Fezcast.
So I'm here with Sam, and we're both very pleased to have Emily Wiles from Saracens on the programme. And Emily, I'll ask you in a minute to say what you do, but perhaps first, why don't we kick off by you telling us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history, what you've done before, and how you ended up at Saracens.
Yeah, of course. No, thanks for having me, guys. Really excited to not share any secrets, but just share a bit of insight as to what we get up to in head office. So a little bit about me. My job title is a bit of a weird one. We can probably come on to it, as you say, Duncan, but it's Director of Growth, which means lots of things to lots of different people, and people can interpret in different ways. So I've been at Saracens for around 18 months. Before that, I was at the Oval Cricket Ground for 7 years, which was an amazing experience. I actually started my career at a marketing agency called Pitch, based in Soho. They're amazing. I was really fortunate to come straight out of university, go to them and work on clients like the NBA, Virgin Racing. So travelled all around the world with Virgin Racing and their exploration into Formula E, which was amazing. Slight venture into rugby in that one of my clients was QBE, and they sponsored the Autumn Internationals at the time. So that was good fun. That was kind of my first experience of rugby, and maybe we'll touch on it, but my rugby expertise isn't great, so please don't ask me any tricky questions about that. After a brief stint at a tech startup, I then joined the Oval. So like I say, I was there for 7 years, basically overseeing all B2C revenue streams. So just making sure that we were doing a great job of selling memberships, selling tickets. I also oversaw retail there as well, content. So that was an amazing experience working across the Ashes, T20s, the 100 World Cups, and then met Lucy Ray. I'm trying to think when it was, probably late 2022, early 2023. Met her for a coffee, and she was telling me all about Saracens, and just immediately fell in love with the club and what it was all about and what it stood for, and decided that was my next step, joining the club as Director of Growth. 18 months later, it's been incredible.
So she was a good salesman then, Lucy, was she?
It's funny. So I got introduced to her through a former colleague, basically. He said, you should meet Lucy Ray and hear all about Saracens and what they're up to, and maybe there's an opportunity for you there. So I met her and Googled Saracens before, because, as I say, I knew nothing about rugby particularly. Googled Saracens before I went, and the Ray family, and naturally a lot of the things that came up was salary cap. And so I went into this meeting not really knowing who Lucy was and what she was all about and what the Ray family stood for. And then, went for a coffee, and just my mind was blown. I mean, even the fact that they at the time had a netball club, let alone a high school, just blew my mind. So it was a great 30 minutes to an hour or so with her. And I remember coming back home to my husband being like, there's no way I'm not going to go and work for Saracens, because it's such an incredible place.
Well, I'm not going to ask you who's better, Lucy Ray or Mark Thompson, because I wouldn't expect you to comment on that. But give us some more flavour of what your job is.
For sure. So Director of Growth, so effectively means I'm responsible for a lot of our B2C revenue streams. So the direct reports into me is ticketing, marketing, communications, content, and community. So the way I describe it to, say, my parents, who maybe director of growth means nothing to them, is ultimately my job is to build a fan base, whether that's across our digital channels, so trying to get more people to follow us across our own social media channels or visit the website, or importantly, getting fans into the stadium. It's kind of full audience funnel. Building a fan base and engaging with a fan base is basically my role.
You have a lot of interaction with the various fan groups that interact with the club, like the Fans Forum, like the SSA, like us. People outside of sports clubs think that there's a huge organisation behind it, but it's really quite small, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think being small is a good thing. It means you can, there's not lots of hoops to jump through. If you want to make change, you can do it. There's obviously challenges with having a small team, but I think, it works for us. I think we're the right size. As an example, in supporter services, there's 3 people. So if you write an email or pick up a phone, it's one of those 3 people who are going to be responding to you when you get in touch with the club. Marketing, there's 2 people. There's 1 graphic designer. There's 2, 3, 4 people across content and comms. So it's not huge in terms of the areas that I oversee. Community as well is probably 3, 4, 5. So it's not huge. It's a lot of people working really, really hard and trying to do the best thing that they can. And I think sometimes this word can be thrown around, or words can be thrown around quite a lot, is fan first. But we genuinely, everything we do, we never, obviously we need to make money and we are a business, but when we make decisions, we genuinely do it with the fans in mind. We're never thinking, how can we exploit this core fan base? That is never, ever on our agenda. It's always, okay, how can we do things that are in the best interest of the fans and also, from the club's point, are sustainable as well? But I absolutely love speaking to fans and members. And you'll know, Duncan, whether it's through us talking in a supporters forum capacity or, chatting with Alison and Nigel at the SSA and whatnot. I absolutely love it. And I think that is the way that we can always get better, is just talk to people, get out there. I think maybe people don't realise is that when we send out post-match surveys after every single game, we read every single response. And I think sometimes people don't appreciate that we go through, there's hundreds and hundreds of bits of feedback from that, but we genuinely go through every single one and look at what we can improve on game by game, because that's direct feedback from the fans. That means we can keep getting better. And I know some of the comments are, I don't know if you're reading this and is this actually getting through to it goes around everybody in the business, so it does get read.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about what your challenges are, but you often hear grumbles from fans. They're saying, why can't they do this or that? And often the challenge is hours in the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
One of the questions that I asked Mark was to do with comparing fans to sort of customers in a business. And he gave the answer of actually they're quite similar. And it's quite interesting to hear what you're sort of saying there, because from my sort of point of view is, if you've got fans or customers, the more that they're happy, the more they're going to spread the word about the club. And it's almost, if you obviously come from a sort of business background where you've worked in B2C and that kind of stuff, referrals and that's the kind of terminology that's used in business. In our world, in the world of sports, or in your world, in the world of sports, the better you can create the experience for the fans that arrive, the more that they're likely to, shout from the rooftops about Saracens. And that, I suppose, has a snowballing effect to increasing ultimately what you're trying to do, which is the fan base, right?
Yeah, exactly that. You will never hear me say the word consumer ever. It's always fans. Whenever I read an article in the sports industry where someone's referred to fan groups as consumer, you'll never catch me doing that. I think it's interesting what you're saying, because you're absolutely right. When I came in and was speaking to Lucy Ray about the role, one of the things she said to me is like, would you be able to come in and help us get more new people into StoneX? Because, for example, 10 to 20% of the tickets that we have available, we're just not able to sell on a match-by-match basis, and we're not able to sell the ground out. So immediately the thought was, okay, that means we're not getting enough new people to matches. So that was the brief. So I said, before I start, can you send me all of your data and I'll have a look through and just kind of, have a look at some insights, see what I can pull from the data. And actually, one of the things that I realized is that we do a really good job of getting new people in. If you think of the Showdown, for example, it's like 60, 70% of people are new, in that they've never been to a Saracens fixture before coming to the Showdown. That's a great acquisition tool for us. But actually at StoneX, we're doing a really good job of getting people in, but we're not necessarily that good at getting people to come back. So we have a lot of people who come to one game and they don't come back. So our retention rate for 22-23 was only 20%. So that means year on year, only 20% of people are coming back. And that's a problem, right? Because we also know that they're coming to the game and they're having a great time, because we see that in the feedback scores that we have. So for me, that's just a marketing challenge for us to overcome. Is we've got this audience coming in, they're having a good time. That's on us now to communicate to them in the right way, through the right channel, with the right communication, with the right message, to try and get them to come back. So that's just an example of, some of the stuff that we've been tackling over the past year or two. Is everyone wants new fans. Of course we do. That's, we want to build a bigger fan base, but actually when we've got people in, we just need to really look after them and make them feel valued and bring them into that Saracens fan base so that they keep coming back.
What do you see as the other number one challenge, perhaps your number one priority? If you could solve this tomorrow, what would it be?
I've already kind of covered it in the retention piece. I think the team that I work with closely on a day-to-day basis, they must think it's boring, the amount that I bang on about retention and looking after people and making sure they come back and personalising our communication. But the biggest challenge that we're tackling this year is it's a little bit boring, or can be a little bit boring, and that it's all about data and CRM and infrastructure and the tools and technology that we have available to us. Because at the moment we are really limited to what we can do, just because we don't have the right infrastructure and technology in place. So we're actually going through a project at the minute to completely overhaul all of the data and CRM and marketing tools that we have, just so that we can improve how we talk to people, the frequency of when we talk to people, the channels through which we talk to people, and really just start to understand our fans more. We're not capturing data to sell it in any way. We're capturing data because we want to know more about Sam and more about Duncan. So the more we know, the better we can service you, because we understand what your wants are and what your needs are. And so it sounds a little bit boring when you say, we're really focused on data and having new technology, but it's super, super important, because yes, we want to build a fan base, but what does a big fan base mean to us if we don't understand them and know what they want from the club? So that's the big thing that we're focusing on over the next 12 months.
It's so funny that you say that, because I run my own business as well, and my little phrase is systems are sexy, because I'm absolutely fascinated. Everything you've just said ticks so many of my boxes. I love it, because you're right. The more you can understand about how an individual interacts, the better you are at being able to service that person, and ultimately that leads to that end goal, doesn't it, of what you've just said. I guess my follow-up question to that, and maybe it goes back around to some of the things that you are directly responsible for, if you like, is things like the marketing and stuff like that. We've spoken within our group, how great we think that the marketing is and how much improved it's been over the last few years. Obviously,
we're not meant to tell you that, Emily.
Oh, sorry. It's terrible. We think it's rubbish. It's lots of improvement needs to be made now. But obviously, the most recent thing is the new sort of show, which has a ridiculous abbreviation that goes on for a long, long time. But seems to have been met with a lot of popularity and a lot of great feedback. And I suppose one of my questions is, you talked about fan base in the stadium. How important is the fan base outside the stadium? And I coined a term when we spoke to Mark, of Wrexhamification of sports clubs. How important is that? And is that sort of part of the getting new international wider audiences, or is that part of the retention strategy to try and improve the marketing to entice people to come back?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's so important. If you ask me what is more important, I would still say in the short term, definitely just getting a more local audience that can come and see the product themselves, come to match days and really get up close and personal with the team. But yeah, it's super important that we do build a wider fan base. And I was actually at a conference this week where they were talking about the Golden State Warriors as an example, and they were saying, less than 1% of their fan base is ever going to have the opportunity to go and watch a basketball game of the Golden State Warriors actually in the arena. Yet the fan base outside of that still has huge value to them. So yeah, it's really important for us. TSPDS, we really wanted to do, because I think we all are obsessed with everything that Saracens stands for, and we're so invested in it. But there's also a lot of people out there who don't know what we're all about and who have opinions of us that we don't believe are necessarily right. And that's not to say that we are all about changing people's opinions of us. Like, as you'll see from TSPDS, the training ground just care about looking after each other and working really hard for each other. That is all they ever talk about. They're not really worried about outside perceptions at all. But for us, it felt really important to just have an opportunity to showcase just how brilliant that culture within the training ground is. So we're really proud of TSPDS. I can't take any credit for it at all. It's definitely a work of the content team, and in particular Ryan Walters, who is our head of content. He's done a fantastic job on it. But yeah, the more we can share content like that, the better. The players are really bought into it. And, I love hearing from the coaches. If I get the chance to sit in a team meeting at the training ground, I know nothing about rugby. So the vast majority of what they're talking about, I don't understand, but I still get value from sitting in those team meetings, just listening how they communicate, the way they communicate, how they listen to players and make sure that everyone feels heard. It really is incredible. So yeah, the more we can share that type of content, then we absolutely will.
How engaged do you think the players are in helping you with your job and getting the word out there and building up the Saracens fan base?
I honestly think they're brilliant. And having worked in different sports and with different, and you tend to call them talent, which is a bit of a weird term to use, but working with talent in different sports and different sports teams, I think the Saracens players are the best that I've ever worked with. I think they're absolutely brilliant. They completely get why they're being asked to do things. Of course, they don't always want to do some of the things that we're asking them to do, but they do it and they're brilliant. And we're really grateful to have such an invested team, and the coaches understand why we're doing things. So credit to Warwick, who's I'll probably get his formal job title wrong, but he's head of culture at the training ground and team management. He's just absolutely brilliant. The way he kind of helps us as the head office work with the players, I think is brilliant. So yeah, it's a great process, and yeah, we haven't had any issues at all with the players. They're absolutely brilliant. I should say as well, we get this report from PRL because they look at all of the post-match surveys that every single club in the Premiership does. And there's a question in there that you'll probably know, you guys will know from looking at the post-match surveys around player engagement. And I think the average across the league that for all the different Premiership clubs is 6, and we're at 9. That we're miles ahead of everybody else in terms of how do you feel access and engagement is with players on a match day. And I sent it to Warwick when we got the results through, because that's something that we should be really, really proud of, is the players want to spend time with the fans, and they do spend time with the fans. So yeah, it's great to see that is paying off and people are recognising that.
And the women, even more than the men, I think. They were absolutely incredible at it.
The women are brilliant. And to be honest, I think that we can do, and we've talked about a lot about content with the women's team in particular, and there's a real reason why TSPDS doesn't focus on the women's team, because we feel they deserve their own content series and their own output that shows their identities and the team they are in a very different way to what the men's team are. And I think I'm really excited by the opportunity to showcase those personalities of the women's team, because they're absolutely brilliant. And especially when you've got the Home World Cup next year, let's shout about these players and how great they are and their personalities and all the differences within the team. And yeah, there's a real opportunity there. And hopefully we can do a good job of showcasing their stories and their personalities ahead of the World Cup next year.
The stories about their dedication, I suspect, are going to be great, because the level of skill that especially the non-professionals show, the amount of work that they must put in addition to having a job, is just incredible.
I was actually with Flo Williams yesterday. I think it was yesterday, or maybe it might have been Wednesday. She was at the same event that I was at, and we caught up over lunch, and I was asking her about, her commitment to playing rugby alongside. She has a full-time job working at an agency called Matter, who are brilliant. And yeah, it was fascinating listening to her doing a full day at work, and then she leaves work and she goes to training, and she does however long training, and then she's got a gym, and then she's got team meetings, and she goes home and does it all over again the next day. And yeah, it's a lot, but they absolutely love it. And yeah, credit to them. They really are a great group.
When you're getting all this information about me and Sam and everybody else, a bit like an Alexa in the corner listening in, there must be one heck of a range of people. I mean, you take Back in Black, for instance, which I think is brilliant as the players walk out, and I'm shouting, turn it up. And then there's some old codger a few seats down saying, what is this terrible heavy metal? There must be a huge range of tastes and what people want.
There is, and no one's right or wrong. So a lot of it is subjective, right? There are things that people give us feedback about, and we can completely understand that, we need to make a change because this is absolutely the truth and that is the case. But yeah, you get a lot of range of opinions, and you have to respect everybody. And ultimately we're trying to do the best that we can to make sure that everybody who comes to Stonex Stadium has an amazing time, and there's a balance to be had. Noise is a big one. Every single match day, you'll have X many people saying it's too loud and X many people saying it's too quiet. There is a balance, but, our big thing is just making sure that no matter who you are, no matter what your interest in rugby is, no matter what you're there for, if you're there with family, if you're there in a big group of mates, we just want everybody to have a good time. It's a really difficult thing to get right. And to be honest, it's one of those things where you probably never sit there on a match day and go, we absolutely got that 100% right. You're always making tweaks and improving every single match day. But yeah, we genuinely do look at absolutely everything and see all these little tweaks we can make, whether it's changing, food offerings in the ground and tweaking things, or changing music volume, or changing the actual songs, or, way players feature around the match day and whatnot. We're always looking at ways to improve. So yeah, keep the feedback coming in, because I promise you it gets read.
Well, I think you do a great job, and I love the opportunity to call someone else an old codger, which is calling the kettle black.
But usually what I'm calling you, is it?
It is. Like saying you're in nappies. Do you want to go with the last question, Sam?
I was going to actually try and end it on a positive note, which was, you talk about all the feedback you get. What's the consistent, best bit of feedback about the matchday experience that you see?
It's all about people and how friendly the experience is, and that's something that I recognise myself, whether it's being at a match day myself, or when my friends come along to matches, and the feedback that I get directly from them. It's always, the Pioneers are so friendly. It feels like such a positive environment to be in. Everyone's so welcoming, and that's actually a really hard thing to get right. You can often go to lots of different match day experiences and everything might be quite seamless, but nobody smiles at you at any point that you're in the ground. Whereas I can guarantee at Saracens, you're going to get that when you come. And one of the metrics that we measure ourselves on, as you'll have seen in the post-match survey, is warmth of welcome. And we consistently score high on that, because, you go in and I'm pretty sure you'll meet someone who's saying a cheery hello and asking if you need help and whatnot. So for me, that's almost, you often can't train that stuff either, right? It's just this environment that we've been able to build at Saracens is really special. So that's one that, we're really, really proud of.
I definitely agree with that. I think it is a massively positive environment. And as someone who's been to lots of other grounds to watch Saracens play, you don't always see that. And so it's definitely the truth. So that feedback you're getting, I think both Duncan and I would share in that. The Pioneers are amazing, the staff are amazing, and everyone does everything that they're doing with a smile on their face and always fall over themselves to help out. So I think we're definitely doing that right. It's we're market leading, to go back to using corporate speak.
Well, everybody I bring down absolutely loves it, so they're definitely getting it right.
Good. No, it's good to hear. And again, there is a dedicated matchday team, Herman, Kev, and Alex McIntyre. So I can't take any credit for it. It's definitely those guys putting in a shift and putting on a great matchday.
Well, that's great. Well, Emily, we know that you're incredibly busy, so really grateful for you for coming on. And it's been a pleasure to hear from you. No,
thanks so much. And honestly, if anybody ever has any questions or is interested into what we're doing, feel free. I think my Twitter DMs are open. My email address isn't that hard to crack. So if anyone's ever got any questions or feedback, then we're always open to having a chat. So please do get in touch.
Oh dear, careful.
You might. I was going to say you might regret that.
See how it goes. But you are. I know. We're very helpful. Thanks once again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Hi, this is Petrus Duplessis, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
I personally haven't seen the Ealing game at all, which is really good for this in-depth podcast we're about to do. But fortunately, someone has, and that is John Mannings, who's joining us for the first time in a little while on the show. So, John, welcome back, mate. How you doing? You all right?
Hello, Matt. Yeah, all good. Thank you, mate. All good.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. Well, we're going to keep this short because, John, you're basically hibernating at the moment, aren't you? It's got a lot to do, a lot of sleep to catch up on, right?
Yeah, well, it's always nice doing a split shift, but especially on a Monday, things that little bit more.
No, fair play. Well, look, I mean, because we haven't had you on the show for a few weeks, it's probably worth asking you what you've sort of felt so far with the season as a whole, because it has been a little bit up and down. And I think sometimes when we're reviewing it week to week, we don't really get the big picture. So, just the season in general for you, mate. What are your thoughts so far?
I think if you'd have offered me top four going into this block of autumn internationals, I would have took it. I think if you consider we're 2 points off the top, it's been a pretty consistent start. We've had some, obviously, the games that we've lost against Quins and Leicester were both very, very different. I think the Quins defeat was probably always going to happen after what happened right early in that game. It seemed to me that, and understandably so, not having to go at any of the players, like that was what happened to Andy Onyema Christie, obviously shook them. And from then on, Harlequins, they did their job, and they actually showed a different side to them, which is not their usual swashbuckling side. And maybe they caught us cold a bit. And then the Leicester one, well, I mean, where to start with that one? You've got players pulling out half an hour before the game kicks off. You've got as it turns out, Alex Lazowski and Elliot Daly could have played if it weren't for these silly RFU laws. And, the fact that they didn't even make the bench against New Zealand makes it even worse. But it's one of those things where we're seeing the squad now being tested in some of these league games, which is not unusual. We've had, usually Six Nation periods are where you get, back in the day, it was Duncan Taylor and Jackson Ray's time to shine. And now we're finding that there's, these other different players obviously stepping into the breach. I think if you'd have said 4 wins from 6, would you take that? I would have said, yeah. We've played some really, really good stuff. The games, Gloucester away was very good. Sale at home again was very good, I thought. There's been periods in those games where we've looked amazing. There's also been times where away at Bristol, which was probably, because of the way the win occurred, probably the best one, you'd say, because, 80th minute, penalty kick to win it, it's always sweet. But there was periods in that game where it's like, this is what has happened to us. We are so soft. They're just cutting through us at will. So there's still work to be done. Obviously, it's a new group. And patience is the key. But I believe, considering some of the pundits and the so-called experts were saying we might, their caught shout of the season would be the Saracens don't make the playoffs. I think we've hopefully rubbished those already, and I think we look all right. Well, I think we look all right. I think Fergus Burke's fitness is the key. We've already seen that, the robust nature of this league that he's joined is very different to being, the second choice in his comfort zone, if you like. If he has a good next part of the season, I think we'll be fine.
I think you're probably right, mate. I mean, I think there were a fair few of us on this show that thought we might be struggling to, maybe not struggling to make the top 4, but top 4 would be a bonus. But then I suppose Jez, myself, Duncan, I don't think any of us really claim to be experts. So that's a big difference, right? But no, I definitely agree with you.
I think one thing you would say about the league is it's lost a lot of stars in general. And it has evened out the playing field. It's actually created some really amazing games and some less predictable results, which is frustrating sometimes if your team's on the wrong end of it. But for the league as a whole, I think it's been really good. Although the standard probably has dropped, I'd say undeniably it has. It's still an exciting league to watch.
No, I think you're probably right. And I suppose if the standard drops, that's probably less of a problem than if the standard drops sort of for some teams and not others, and there ends up with these big gaps. Yeah, you're right. If it's all dropping together and evening out, then it's going to look a bit more exciting, isn't it? If there's a lot of close games as there has been, and yeah, you're right. But that Bristol match was just ridiculous, wasn't it? That was just defence was optional from both sides. I've started going grey in the last couple of years, and it's definitely to do with one, doing this podcast, but two, Saracens. You can't really argue with that, can you?
The thing is, I always say, if it's predictable, it's boring. What's the point? There's jeopardy on every single game. Any game can go either way. Apart from if you're playing Exeter, you'll definitely win.
Well, yeah, that's hope, didn't it? Apart from the start of last season, but we'll ignore that one.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But no, you're right. I mean, I do remember going to, I think, one of the games we played against Worcester at home and put a second string side out and still won by 60 points, and I actually walked away just a bit bored. So, yeah, definitely right, mate. Definitely right. But that's that's the Premiership season. Things are a bit different in the Cup, aren't they? Obviously, we've got the internationals on. Lots of players are away. Lots of players are injured, and it's a chance for us to put out a much less experienced, younger team. Although there were a few players coming back from injury and things as well that are a bit more experienced, but not many of us were able to watch it. It was just a hardy few that went down to Ealing and watched it live, which you did, thankfully, John. So we've got someone to talk to about it. But I mean, from the right up, there's a positive spin put on the game. But from what I could see coming through on the social media feeds and things, the first half in particular wasn't great. Was that the impression that you got as well?
Yeah, there was, two things really stood out for that opening 10 minutes. They started like house on fire. They'd scored 2 tries in 4 minutes or whatever it was. And we just seemed a little bit too passive. And them boys seemed like so tense. There were so many drop balls, handling errors, silly things that are easily avoidable. And if you could take out, I know it's easy to say now with hindsight, but you take out the first 10 minutes, or we start better, we probably end up winning. Not with the greatest of performances. However, those opening 10 minutes and then the second half started the same. They scored early second half, and that was kind of took the wind out of our sails. But one thing I will say about this team, average age of about 14, I think our team was, they didn't give up. They showed some balls, they showed some grit. They didn't give it in, even though two players from Ealing in particular stood out, both ex of this parish. Ruben Bird-Tulloch scored 2 tries. He looked very, very good at outside centre. And Akinbaye Allo absolutely ate our scrum every single time. Every time there was a handling error, it resulted in a penalty, because it was a penalty at scrum time. And Allo was man of the match. He was unbelievable. He was so good. And that Ealing team, really, the difference is the pack. The pack were too big, too strong, too well-oiled, too much cohesiveness for our relatively inexperienced pack and team in general to cope with. I think the main positives from our point of view, Sam Spink starting the game. I like the look of him already. I was stood chatting to Gareth Simpson for about 10 minutes at the end. And bearing in mind, Sam Spink had just made his debut against Ealing. I compared him to Brad Barrett. I feel a bit silly now. But he is that kind of centre in terms of stature, in terms of both sides of the ball. He looked really good. And the other one, who I'm pretty sure will be terrorising Premiership defences before too long, is Brandon Jackson. I thought he was very, very good. And I felt really sorry for him. He scored his second try. He looked like a wounded gazelle sprinting 50 metres. He'd obviously cramped up, but it didn't stop him. And he was kind of like, I don't even know how to describe this run he was doing. Like, one leg was dead straight. The other one wasn't. And yeah, he scored, collapsed to the ground. And I think the first 2 players to him didn't even congratulate him. They just took a leg each and stretched him out. He put some serious amount of work in, as did as well, unfortunate circumstances for Charlie Bracken to go off early. But Callum Braley came on and I thought he looked quite good. So to have that experienced half-back pairing of Braley and Swill for what ended up being probably about 75 minutes definitely helped. But yeah, look, none of them were. It's not like we were terrible. I don't think we were. I just think it was a very young, inexperienced team who do not have that kind of cohesiveness against a side who, albeit a championship side, very, very good team.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at how Ealing have played over the last few years. I mean, a lot of people are saying that they're championship world beaters and they'll give Premiership sides a run for their money, and they have beaten a number of Premiership sides over the last few years, including us more than once. But that generally is a Premiership side that's rotated and played their B players, their academy players and things. And Ealing are still putting out their first team, which is fair enough. But they've topped the Championship for 2 out of the last 3 seasons, but not by much. But they're, like you say, they are a well drilled, pretty grizzled team. A lot of people are calling them a pack of mercenaries, but I don't think that's fair at all, really. Yes, someone's bankrolling them a bit, but they're good young players, and particularly guys that you've name checked that are formerly of Saracens, like Ruben Bird-Tulloch and B. Allo. They're still good young players, and there are Premiership clubs hovering around them. So it's fair enough, fair play to them. We'll just have to see what happens. But the result as a whole, yes, it's a loss to Ealing, and yes, it's 0 points. But obviously, it's a young team put out there, and they've probably learned plenty from it. And it sounds like the second half was a bit brighter, and there was a bit to take from it. Is that fair, John?
Yeah, I think so. If you consider the fact that it was 24-5 at half time, we won the second half 14-5 then. I mean, if you look at it from that point of view, and considering we had 2 trialists come on as well, I believe, as finishers,
yep.
It's probably what happened is the fitness of our team maybe shone a little bit towards the end. I think if it had gone on another 10 minutes, we would have won. But still, there was enough opportunity there. Had we have been more clinical, there was enough entries into the 22 and enough good players on the pitch. And you've got Angus Hall, who's a good winger as well. Tom Parton played. There was enough there, attacking-wise, to be able to do more than we did, that is a little bit of a frustration. There was a couple of times where the line-out misfunctioned, and then obviously just before half-time, we lose 2 players to yellow cards a minute apart and a penalty try is given. And, maybe it's inexperience. He's probably the most experienced of that team, of the forwards anyway. Toby Knight was the recipient of one of them. And it was like, all right, they were clearly going to score anyway. Like, they were too strong for us in that at that moment. They were, like I keep saying, they're well oiled, mate. They look like a really good side. And like I said in our WhatsApp group, I would back them to beat Newcastle, probably and Exeter at the moment as well, to be perfectly honest. They looked very, very good. Fair play to them. And you saying about their players being mercenaries, I've never left a job for less money, mate. I don't blame anyone else for doing the same.
No, I wouldn't argue with that. Who would do that? I mean, you mentioned a couple of trialists. I mean, the one that is worth just mentioning quickly is Izzy Moore Iono, who in theory is on trial as a potential injury cover for Andy Christie. I don't know how long he actually played for, but did you really see anything of him?
Again, I think by that point it was just I was freezing cold and ready to go home, to be honest. But I couldn't tell you too much, to be honest, mate. I spent the majority of the second half was either talking to my son or Gareth Simpson, who was just in front of us, and bending his ear about this and that. So it was. He didn't do anything. I don't think he done anything terribly. I don't think he was that great either, to be honest. But listen, this is where the squad. Hopefully they'll come back unscathed from international duty, because we don't have the numbers and the depth of quality that we used to. And if we're having to bring people off of their work desks like we did with Tim Swill last week and trialists it's a little bit worrying, especially like for these cup games where there was plenty of players who perhaps could have stepped in. Yeah. Another thing to mention, actually, which was another highlight of the day, was that Ollie Hartley took a full part in the warm up. Now I know that I think it was James Tyrrell or Rob Webber, one of the two, said prior to the game they were hoping to get him some minutes. That didn't happen, but he does not look far away. So hopefully we'll see him next weekend.
Yeah, that's good. So obviously we had a chat with him not too long ago as well, and he was saying the same thing. So it's good to hear that's going well. But yeah, we a loss to Ealing is what it is. But I mean, the other bit just to chat about quickly as well is, I mean, just to say to our listeners that you're lucky that we only really subject you to about 10% of what's actually in our heads, because the chat on our Fezcast WhatsApp group over the last few days has been dreadful, really, between all of us. We've been rabbiting on about all sorts of nonsense, mainly about Ealing and what they actually offer to rugby should they be finally allowed into the Premiership. And there's a lot of different views on that, if it's Newcastle or even Exeter that get binned for them. But we know what they offer as a team playing wise. They've beaten Premiership sides and they offer something. But there's obviously a lot said about the fact that they're completely bankrolled. They've not got a huge attendance, and the facilities are up and coming, but still quite small. But obviously, you were there, John. How was it for you as an atmosphere, but just sort of the facilities in general? What was your impression just being there?
Atmosphere, there was none, pretty much.
Well, we're used to that anyway.
You think that, and then you go to a ground like that, and you realise actually it's quite loud at Stonehenge.
Yeah.
I think. There was 2,228. I think was the attendance. It was decent considering there's a big game going on not far away at Twickenham.
Yeah.
And, there was plenty of Saracens fans there. I'm not sure what the split was, but I would say it was pretty healthy. There was a lot of Saracen shirts on show. And it's a nice ground. It's a nice place. It's easy enough to get to. I'd go again. I was hoping that it would be a 60-0 win like it was last time we went there, fully loaded, I think, in the playoff final 3 years ago. But then we had, 6 players who were joining up with the British and Irish Lions 10 days later, I think, in that team that day. So weren't really open thinking that might happen. But yeah, it's one of them grounds. It's a funny old place just at the end of a row of houses, and it just sort of opens up. Not like it's fallen from space and landed in a field like our stadium. But they seem to be pretty well supported. There was a lot of people there that were well lubricated by the end, and spending their money in there. The clubhouse was nice. The facilities were decent. There was toilets with running water, which is more than we get behind the North and South stands at Saracens, right? So it was all right, mate. It was all right.
That's fair enough. Oh yeah, it's probably because it is a bit new and a bit more recently bankrolled. There probably are some more modern facilities than a lot of clubs. I mean, the likes of Gloucester and Bath can probably learn a couple of bits. But yeah, I mean, I know their attendances in the Championship are quite often under 1,000, which isn't a great look if you can get promoted to the top flight. And you'd assume that would pick up a little bit, but
it would. It definitely would. You know what it's like. You get these people that will start following them all of a sudden. Maybe even just to see the away players turning up and playing on their patch. That's generally what happens. I remember I'm not that far from Charlton Athletic, and I remember them being in the Premier League. All of a sudden, all my mates who were Man United fans are now Charlton fans. They're probably not anymore, but they could go to the Valley and watch their actual team play once a season. And yeah, I don't know how many they get down there now. It's not as many as it used to be.
That's fair enough. I mean, I'm going to have to ask the question because it's all we've been talking about this week. But let's assume that it's Ealing against Newcastle in a playoff, and hypothetically Ealing have passed everything that they need to pass to get promoted. Would you happily see them come up at Newcastle's expense if they do win that, or is that a bit of a? I mean, it's not a yes or no question really, because I think there's more than two sides to this, but.
I think it is for me. I think if they win the Championship and win the playoff, then they fully deserve to take their place in the Premiership. I honestly don't see any argument against that at all. You look at leagues all over the world. How many is there? It's 7 London-based Premier League teams. I know it's football, it's a different sport. But there's never been a question. I don't understand that. It's based purely on sporting merit. You win the league, you get your reward. There's no. I was a bit. I didn't really understand what was going on in that WhatsApp group. I'll be honest. It was like, you win it, you get your reward. That's it. Simple. End of story.
Yeah, I suppose it would be what happens to the club that goes down in the current climate of rugby. Would we lose a Newcastle or someone from rugby entirely because they lose that Premiership money, which would be a shame, definitely. But yeah. I can't say I disagree with you.
I understand that. I do, but it's not Ealing's fault.
No.
I think that's what I'd always come back to, regardless of the geographical location of the side that would go up. I pray for the sake of our WhatsApp group that it's Doncaster or Coventry that gets promoted, and then we can all have a nice summer. But yeah, for me, you win it, you get your reward. End of story.
Yes. Well, there's a good insight for everyone listening to the background of everything that goes on behind the scenes with us, isn't there? Unfortunately, no one else is here to respond to that. Otherwise, we'll actually have one of the longest shows we've ever done when it's supposed to be a short one.
That's the only reason I answered your question, Matt.
Yep.
If there'd have been 4 of us, I would have gone, I've got nothing to say.
Well, that's perfect. And on that note, it's probably time for you to go to bed, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, I reckon so. Yeah.
But yeah, John, really appreciate that, mate. It's good to have your insight, especially on something that we've struggled to cover. Other than that, but we will be able to cover the London Scottish game next week because a few of us will be at that one.
Yep.
And hopefully I'll have a chat about the women's game in a second as well. So, yep, John, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we speak to you again a bit sooner.
Top man, Matt. No problem, mate.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Osterbury here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
We are going to talk about the women's match down in Exeter. Unfortunately, we do have a double weekend of losses to talk about this week, but still plenty to pick up on. Again, not very many of us were able to watch this game. I was, but to give us her expert opinion, we have someone who's joining us as a guest this week to bring the average age of the Fezcast down quite considerably. Alex Anthony, who's with us. Hello, Alex. How are you? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Excellent.
How are you?
I'm also quite good, thank you. Now, so you're compared to a lot of people, you're probably quite new to Saracens and to rugby, just because you've not been on this earth for longer than 16 years.
Yeah.
But just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you came to support Saracens.
So I've been supporting Saracens from really little. My parents have been taking me, and I started supporting the women's team probably about 3 years ago.
And in those 3 years, who's been your favourite players?
Probably Sydney Gregson or Sophie Jagoli.
That is good to hear. You know, that's so many people are going to be saying Marley Packer, Poppy Cleal, Zoe Harrison. So it's good to stick a few extras in there. Very, very good players, definitely. Look, the season so far, we've played 5 games, and going into this weekend, we were unbeaten in the first 4. But you know, there's been a lot of rotation of players and things. A lot of players away with international rugby. How have you seen the season going so far?
I think it started really well, especially the amount of players we had away. But that's important going forward in the season because it's so short that we need the depth to be able to rotate players.
No, that's fair. And is there any of those sort of rotated players stood out for you so far?
I think Jojo Lincoln's has been really good at fullback. Especially as Jess Breach is injured now, so yeah, long term. Amelia McDougall's been good as well. Obviously played a lot last season, but yeah, stepping up into 10 role.
Absolutely, but yeah, there's some tough games to come in a short season, isn't there? And one of those tough games was against Exeter, and we've not really got a great record down there against them, have we?
No, we've only won 1 game, so
it was an important one. So yeah, defeat to Exeter 29-12. Spot on from Alex, who's corrected me there, and I've edited it to make myself sound a lot more professional. But it was pretty close, certainly in the first half. Bit of work to do, but we looked in the game, didn't we, to start with?
I think we just had loads of handling errors, so it meant they kept getting possession, and then they just had so many chances to score. I think Sarah McKenna's yellow card sort of did it for us because they got a couple of tries, and then that kind of ended the game.
It did, yeah, but. Second half they kind of ran away from us, really, didn't we? But looking at positives, there were definitely some good things to take from that game. It was certainly very physical, wasn't it? What sort of stood out for you as a positive to bring forward into the next few games?
We definitely kept working to get the ball back. May Campbell especially was working really hard to try and turn over the ball every time they had it, but we kept giving away possession, unfortunately.
We did indeed. But yeah, defensively, we were looking really quick, weren't we? I could hear on the stream that the crowd was constantly shouting for offside, and I don't think we ever were. I just think we were getting off the line that quick. It's what it looked like. But you mentioned May Campbell. Let's talk about May a little bit because she's playing. I don't know whether we can say she's playing out of position because she's actually done it quite a lot now, playing in the back row. She's moved from the number 2 shirt to the number 6 shirt to the 7 shirt, back to the 6 shirt again. Do you like what you're seeing from May in that different position?
Yeah, I think she's really good there, but I think we'll see her more at hooker as we integrate more of the internationals back into the squad. And May's in the warm-ups, May's normally practicing with the subs, so whoever's at lock and back row for the subs, which doesn't help because when she switches to hooker, they're not always on the pitch. Yeah. So she's sometimes practicing with the wrong people in the warm-up, which probably doesn't help her.
That does sound pretty difficult. So she's not necessarily practicing as a flanker, she is practicing as a hooker, or is she sort of combining both things?
I think she's combining both, but when she's practicing the line-out, she's practicing a hooker with the subs.
That sounds difficult. Well, we'll make sure we put you in front of Alex Osterbury and you can tell him off for... training May wrong. Did anyone else stand out for you as well as May?
Akina stood out as well because we struggled with our scrum last week, so it was slightly better this week with Akina coming in to start, and she also got the second try. So,
and that you're not just saying that to please the SSA, are you, with their sponsored player?
No.
That's fair enough. Well, look, we've got a bye week coming up, haven't we? And what we got games coming up after that?
Quins, then Loughborough.
Ah, yes. So the duel coming up. That's going to be pretty special, right?
Yeah, very good. Got that in a couple of weeks.
You going to be there?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to see how that goes. Well, Alex, thank you for joining us on the Fezcast, and thank you for taking us through your views of what you saw. Hopefully we'll see you around at some more games in future, and you can give us a bit of extra analysis there. Maybe we'll even bring you into an interview or two.
Thanks.
Many thanks, Alex.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Yeah, many thanks to Alex, John, Duncan, Sam, and of course to Emily Wiles, the Director of Growth at Saracens, for joining us on this week's slightly differently formatted show. We'll be back again next week, where a few of us will be at the London Scottish Prem Cup games. We'll have a good chat about that, and then we'll have to see what we're doing the week after, because there's no rugby at all to talk about in that one. So maybe we'll have a special guest to bring in for a nice interview. But until then, we'll see you soon, everyone.
This is the Fezcast.